There is one Lord, the only one from the only one. That's monos ek manu. Monos ek manu. Only from only. Now, immediately you have to recognize what is behind this is a recognition of the unique nature of Christ. You would never use this language of a mere creature. Who would ever say monos ek manu of Moses or Isaiah or of an angel? Michael, Gabriel, whoever. No. And yet there's a distinction being made. Monos ek manu. So there's no confusion of the persons, and yet there is the same nature, unless you're going to have multiple gods, which the very first phrase was hais theos. The next phrase, theos ek theou, God from God. That's Nicaea. That's Nicaea, God from God. So is Gregory the one that made all this stuff up? No, because we've already seen that this is consistent with those who've gone before and their confessions of faith. God from God. Not a God from a God or a lesser God from a greater God. All of this language is seeking to do justice to the depth of the New Testament revelation, which is why all Unitarians have to absolutely gut the New Testament of its depth of revelation about Jesus. They have to. Watch any Unitarian just lose their minds on John 20:28. It's always sadly entertaining to listen to Unitarians try to explain Thomas's confession. But Thomas would have understood theos ek theou, because that's what he was saying. Character kai icon tes theatetos. Now, I talked about this briefly. I was sort of rushing it last time. So if I'm going back over something, don't worry about it. I realize that I am. Character kai icon. Character and image tes theatetos. And I think this is sort of where we had to speed up last time, because I did mention to you, but look it up, that this is the very term that is used in Colossians 2:9. Hati en auto katoikai panta pleroma tes theatetos somatikos. For in him is dwelling all the fullness of deity in bodily form, that which makes God God. The very essence of God. It's a high term. It is more specific in its definition than theatetos, or thiot, which is translated by the King James as Godhead. Unfortunately, they also translate theatetos as Godhead. So the King James, sorry, going to lose a few people here, but the King James rendering of these phrases is inferior. New King James recognizes that. Modern translations recognize that. This was an area that the King James translators, as great as they were, didn't do the best job. They did not recognize or did not bring out the distinction that you have in Romans 1:20, his divine character, theotes, versus theatetos. So in Colossians 2:9, it's that fullness of what makes God God that dwells in him in bodily form. And so that's how he can be the character. That, of course, is the term that is a stamped representation, an exact representation, which again makes no sense of a mere creature. You cannot have the very essence of God stamped upon a creature because it's too big for the creature. The creature is way too small. let alone to identify the kurios as the icon of deity. The reason that we can have absolute certainty that we know who God is and what his purposes are is because we have Jesus. Because we have Jesus. He is his character and icon, image. Hence, he can be the perfect representation to us of God. The logos energos, the all-accomplishing logos, or it's the energetic logos. And that term energos, the energeia, the energies, in Eastern theology, really differ. Again, Western folks struggle mightily to even begin to try to build categories in our minds for Eastern Orthodox thinking about the energeia and about things like this. It's very rare for Western thinking Christians to even make the attempt. Obviously, that can be taken and become incredibly unbiblical in practice. So when I was in Ukraine, my dear friend took me to various places. We went to some Orthodox churches and some shrines and things like that. And he was talking to me about how the Orthodox women will go to places where the energeia is. And to be honest with you, functionally, it ends up taking on the same folk religion type thing that we were just talking about with the woman who's wants the priest. It's I need to go to a certain place. I need to have a certain person. It's that sacramental concept that once it's divorced from biblical revelation creates all sorts of havoc and falsehood. But the energetic the logos is the one creating and sustaining. So he has power. He is doing this maintenance of these things. The wisdom who embraces the fashioning of all things, the Sophia, again, very common for people to have seen echoes of who Jesus is in wisdom in the Old Testament, especially in Proverbs, because wisdom is involved in creation. And of course, the Logos being the word of the wise God. You see the connections that are there. Obviously, Unitarians try to then go, well, wisdom was created, and as if God was once unwise. I'm not sure how that works. But anyway, they try to go that direction with it. But how do we know of God's wisdom except that he has revealed that in what he has accomplished? And the greatest revelation of that is, of course, the person of Christ. But again, all of this terminology, and I haven't gotten through all of it, all this terminology could never, ever, ever, ever be applied to a mere creature. It's not possible. And so here in 260, long before Nicaea, decades before Nicaea, and in consistency with those who went before, and we could trace this line from Ignatius, Epistle to Diognetus, Clement, the real Clement, Irenaeus, we can trace this line through and see the consistency all the way back to the New Testament documents. It is important to be able to recognize that.